Hello, welcome back. I'm Masood Raja, and today I am going to embark on a perilous journey, and that is, I will be recording a series of lectures on Gayatri Spivak's Can the Subaltern Speak? A lot of people have asked me for it, but I've been reluctant to do that because, to be honest, I think I probably do not have the wherewithal to deal with Spivak's work, but I'll give it a try anyway. This particular lecture is an introductory lecture that sets the stage for other parts of this lecture. And here I would like to point out that this particular essay was an occasional essay, just like an occasional poem. Why was it an occasional essay? Because Spivak was responding to an interview by Deleuze and Foucault. I mean, it's very obvious in the first 2 or 3 pages of the essay that she is doing that. Now, I have a copy of that interview on my website, and I'll post a link to it, but maybe let's see. And the interview was published as Intellectuals and Power, and I can see if I can share the screen to show it to you. So here it is, Intellectuals and Power, and it's an interesting essay because the questions that are being asked of Deleuze and Foucault and the answers that they give is what Spivak is responding to. Okay. But there is a moment in this interview where Deleuze mentions, and remember, Deleuze and Foucault had just come out of the prison reform protests, right? And what Deleuze says at one point in the essay that representation, there is no signifier anymore. Representation is no longer needed because people can speak for themselves, because they had learned in their experiences that the prisoners exactly knew through their lived experiences as to what kind of reform they wanted. So the role of the intellectual was not to speak on their behalf or represent them, but to learn from the people through their lived experiences and then become a relay between the prisoners and the rest of the world and the powers that be. So it's a role of intellectual that is at play, and a sort of assertion that we as intellectuals no longer need to represent the people. Okay. Now, assumption behind that is that people can speak for themselves, right? So the main question in Can the Subaltern Speak, if you read it through and through after you have waded through theory, Derrida and Marx and everyone else, is whether or not the post-colonial intellectual can assume that the subaltern subjects can speak for themselves and hence abdicate his or her responsibility of representation, of speaking for, right? That kind of representation, because Spivak distinguishes between 2 kinds of representations, standing in for and the artistic representation. We'll talk about that more. Now, in this interview then, first of all, it's 2 Western intellectuals talking about Maoism. So the first objection that Spivak have is, okay, here are these 2 European intellectuals using the term Maoism, but which is very Eurocentric. You can't trace the original Maoism in it. It is the French version of Maoism. Then, in the process of giving this interview, right, they are also unannouncedly, right, inhabiting this subjectivity, this privileged European subjectivity, not conscious of the global division of labor, okay, not worried about it at all, because they are imagining their own experience as universal, right? And Spivak finds a problem with that as well. So her argument in the very beginning is that this interview, while critiquing the subject, inaugurates a new subject of the West, right? that there is no understanding of a general theory of ideology and global division of labor when these scholars are making their claims, and that without that, you can't talk about the global periphery, right, where things are happening. So it's very Eurocentric. And most importantly, why is it essential for the intellectual to not to give up on his or her responsibility to represent? Okay, and hence, can the subaltern speak? The question is, can we abdicate our responsibility by simply assuming that the subalterns have obtained political voice and we don't need to be in solidarity with them or represent them? That's the question that she's trying to answer. Now, also keep in mind that Spivak did revise this essay. A lot of people don't go and read it. And it's interwoven with her essay on Rani F. Simur in her book, A Critique of Postcolonial Reason. And on one of the pages, she acknowledges, while talking about, her earlier essay and talking about how Bhubaneswari is still misrepresented by her own relatives, she writes, and I quote, "I was so unnerved by this failure of communication that in the first version of this text, which is Can the Subaltern Speak, I wrote in the accents of passionate lament, the subaltern cannot speak. It was an inadvisable remark." Right? So the revision is there. Now, she doesn't retract that idea that the subaltern cannot speak within the context of Deleuze and Foucault interview, but that correction is there, right? And she acknowledges the work of people who criticize the essay by saying, can the subaltern vote, right? But all of it is contingent upon our understanding of subalternity itself, right? Here, Spivak in the original essay used a sort of strategic essentialism. That was her term, that the subaltern is a subaltern because he or she cannot speak, right? And if we assume that as intellectuals, as scholars, then we can take on the responsibility of working with the subalterns. Now, remember, in another one of her works, Spivak, articulates what is the role of humanities. It's in the first chapter of Other Asias, her other book. And she says that, the role of humanities, one role is to train the imagination of our students at both ends of the global divide, to teach our students over here how to think the world, and to teach the students in the global periphery the habits and the ideas and the knowledge of democracy. So this is just my introductory lecture. I'll delve into the essay, of course, later, but I thought I should explain that she's responding to Deleuze and Foucault and certain claims that they make within the essay, and the lack of a general theory of ideology in their essays, the European subjectivity that both of them uncritically inhabit, right? The Western version of Maoism. And then the main question, can we assume that people can speak for themselves? And if we do, as postcolonial scholars, what is at stake? So this is the first lecture, and I will come back with more. Hope you all will join me. And if you like this kind of work and what I offer, please do subscribe to this channel. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time. Peace and love.